All right, welcome friends and family of the University of Iowa to Chat from the Old Cap. My name is Tony Hakes and I'm the Director of Regional Programs at the University of Iowa Center for Advancement. I'm very excited to have you joining us again today for our 8th episode of Chat from the Old Cap. Today we have a wonderful author, Kiley Reid, New York Times bestselling author, who will be reading from her book. But we also have a very special guest host today in Jade Jones. Jade is a 2017 graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. She's a former Kimbilio Fiction Fellow, and she's a lecturer at the Department of Writing Arts at Rowan University. And she's a managing editor of Glassworks. Jade, so excited to have you on our program. I'm gonna let you take it from here and interview your good friend, Kiley Reid.
Awesome, thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it. Hey, Kiley, hi.
Hey, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see you. Yeah, it's nice to be doing this video call since we can't hang out anymore in person. Right?
This is it. Yes.
That's what we got.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to just see the success of Such a Fun Age, right? I don't think anyone from the workshop, any of your friends would be surprised by the success.
Oh, I am surprised. So that's really nice.
Well, you're very humble, right? But you've always just been so diligent and hardworking. And even from reading the first draft of Such a Fun Age, it was just clear that this was something really special. All right, so I'm going to do an official introduction.
Okay.
All right, so the readers get to hear everything. All right, Kiley Reid, a critically acclaimed Iowa Writers Workshop alumna, will read from her New York Times best-selling debut novel, Such a Fun Age. The recent Truman Capote Fellow will read a passage from her novel, which is currently being adapted into a film by Emmy Award-winning screenwriter Lena Waithe. Reid's writing has been featured in numerous publications, including the New York Times, Ploughshares, and Lumina, where her short story earned first place in the 2017 Flash Prose Contest. So it's super exciting to have you here to talk about your book, to also just talk about your journey too, right? And how you got to where you are today. So I thought to just start, we would begin at Iowa. How did you get to Iowa? How did
That's
you
a great
find yourself
question.
in Iowa City?
That is a really good question. I applied I was living in New York City and working as a receptionist in 2015. And I think that I had this moment, I don't know if you had this too, where I kind of realized how much I didn't know about writing and felt like I'm not going to be able to get there on my own. So let me apply to grad school and try and learn about it that way. So I applied to a bunch of different grad schools and I got rejected from all of them. And it was
their loss.
Terrible. I remember one of them, you know, when you get off of a plane and you your notifications come up.
Yeah.
And I turned it on and one of them came up and I was like, oh, that hurts. And I told myself, don't cry until you get into the cab. Just save it for the cab. Just be cool.
Oh.
And I got in the cab and I just lost it. And the driver was like, you cool? I was like, I'm good. Just keep driving.
Ignore the tears.
Ignore it. We're good. So then I ended up moving to Arkansas with my now husband for the year because he had a job opportunity there. And I wanted to try one more time to apply to grad school. And so I was working at a coffee shop and writing blog entries to pay the bills and just applying to a lot of grad schools. So I think I applied to a total of 16 grad schools, which is expensive and a lot of work. And then Iowa was one of the ones that came back and it was a pretty easy yes. That was always the dream that you don't speak of. And so yeah, when that happened, I felt like, okay, so now I get to take writing seriously. So that's how I got there. Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Oh wait, this makes me feel things though, because then Iowa was like, oh, do you want to talk to anybody? And I was like, yes, can you please hook me up with someone so I can ask a bunch of questions? And they sent me a list of 4 names and I thought that Jade Jones sounded the most normal. And you and I talked.
That's what I remember. We met in what was it? High Ground.
Yep,
Right? That was our first meeting. That's right.
Yes,
yeah,
I was very nervous.
Right.
Yes, but you put me at ease, so I'm glad that happened.
I was going to say, did you visit? And I was like, wait, yeah.
I did.
I remember. I was like, wow, that's so
Yeah,
fun.
we went and visited, and then I remember we were looking for a house, and there was a house on Craigslist that just had the front of the house, which is always kind of red flag. But I was like, this place looks really cute. Let's do it. And so we visited, and it was perfect. And so we ended up living on Church and Governor, right next to the big cemetery, which ended up being such a nice walking area for when I was.
That house was stunning. That was a really beautiful house. It was just spacious, and it had great light.
Yes.
Yeah,
One photo on Craigslist, which I usually don't support, but
yeah.
yeah. That's how we got there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. That's a really, really fun trajectory. I also think it's interesting that in your story, like first came the rejections, right? And like that must have been really, really challenging. But you found just like the ability to try again. And now, right? Like
I mean,
I'm sure
that's it, man.
so many MFA programs are probably looking on Twitter like, what were we doing?
Well, the funny thing is, though, I do think that my sample the second time around was so much stronger. And I felt like the first time, the spirit of my whole application was like, please let me come write at your university, please. And then the second time, I was so much more grounded. And my cover letters, instead of like, please let me come write, was more like, hey, this is what I write about. These are the things I'm interested in. Like, do you want this or not? And I think that time that I took away to just write and figure out what I like to do, which for me is taking really huge socioeconomic issues and whittling them down to like tiny, low to the ground domestic moments, like figuring out what I wanted to do, I think was a huge game changer. So obviously, you know, I'm like, can you have accepted me the first time? That would have been amazing. And it would have saved me a lot of time and money, but I feel much stronger about my second application.
Yeah, that's really awesome to see that confidence. And I think in such a fun age, that confident voice is really there, right? You can feel a writer who just knows how to take charge of multiple voices, multiple characters. I'm getting ahead of myself by talking about the book, but I could rant about it all day.
That's so nice. I really love it. I used to think that like people just had those voices, that people just came out of the gate like knowing exactly what they wanted to write about. And so it's nice to see that, you know, for me, it took 2 or 3 years to figure that out. And that's okay once you get there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So when you first came to Iowa, you already had part of the novel written, right?
Yes.
How do you think it's changed since that first year at Iowa? Like, what was the change to this final draft that the world is reading?
Right. Well, at first it was trash. So that was that was that. But like maybe 50 pages, I think, when I lived in New York, and then I kept on writing it. I did not submit it for my sample to Iowa, and then I brought it maybe like 100 pages to Iowa, and then I had a friend / teacher, Ted Thompson, who also went to Iowa, who has a great book out, and I sent it to him to look at it, and he was like, start over. Like,
start away.
But you know what? Like, basically, in the beginning of my novel, there's an issue of racial bias where a woman and a security guard accuse a young woman of kidnapping. And she was so over the top and just like a cartoon character at that point. And his note to me was just like, how much more insidious and nuanced is it when someone is like, oh, I just want to make sure everyone's safe. That's why I'm here.
Wow.
And I think that really set a tone for the spirit of the novel and what I was trying to accomplish. And so it's never nice when someone's like, it's not perfect, but that is what you need to hear. It's all about the editing. And I think that those notes like made the novel what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's subtlety that's in those interactions where people are the passive aggressiveness, right? And I think that's something your novel does so well that makes it feel so realistic, right? Where people aren't necessarily screaming in your face, right? But like the quiet moments when you can just feel something's off with them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's so well done in this novel.
Thank you. I think that Iowa had all those quiet times where I could be like, okay, I'm going to obsess about this teeny little moment and make it smaller and smaller and smaller. And so, for sure.
Yeah. So you talked about your mentor and how he kind of helped get it into shape. Was there anyone at Iowa that you felt really helped shape the novel into what it is?
Yeah, I feel like I got really lucky with 2 professors. I took the novel workshop, which is very contentious. Some people are like, do not workshop a novel. That's a terrible idea. I think it's a great idea. And so I think it's wonderful that the workshop provides one like every other year, I believe. And so Paul Harding taught the novel workshop when I was here. And it was just, when there's a good workshop, it's just like this little magical gift that you were given. Everyone was so open and wonderful and smart. And Paul he comes at the work saying, okay, how can we make this as great as it can be? Whether it's, you know, so like a poetic, pastoral, lyrical fiction, or whether it's like a sci-fi horror drama. And that was the gamut in that class. I also feel like 2 things happen in a novel workshop is one, like, it kind of feels like more of a book club, and you get to like figure out what you've been doing for that long, and it's a lighter area that people say like, oh, I loved this character, I wanted this to happen, and it seems like it's very not about you, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I think that the amount of genres that we had in that class also really helped me just figure out what every work was calling for. We had like an epic African, like multi-generational novel in there. Wow. We had one about a French wolf that attacks people.
Wow.
We had a horror sci-fi novel about a mega church in there. Like it was all over the place. And I think that that really helped. So Paul Harding for sure. And then I had Jess Walter in my second year, and he and I worked together a bit on the film adaptation as well. So they were huge. They were wonderful.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think all those genres help you look at your own work, right? And so what could I do differently, or what could I bring in that's like, you know, maybe not like a French wolf, but like how can I like bring a different perspective to it?
Right. Isn't it so funny when you read like a bunch of other works and then you go back to your own and you just take a red pen to it immediately? Yeah. It's so strange how editing other people's work makes you more critical of your own in a really good way.
Yeah, it just gives you inspiration, right? To say like, I think it's almost easier to see like a mistake or like a flaw in someone else's work, and then you go back to yours and you're like, I'm doing the same thing.
Yes, right? Those are the best workshops where you're workshopping somebody else's work and the teacher calls them out and you're like, I do that too.
Oh no, yeah.
Let me go home and fix that real quick. Yeah.
That dialogue is flat.
Yeah, that is flat. I do that too. Okay, for sure.
That's really funny. That's really awesome. So have either of those two people read the final version of Such a Fun Age? Have they seen how it's developed over time with their help?
That makes me feel things. Yes, they both ended up giving me blurbs for the book, and they both read the final versions, which feels really sweet. And in Paul's workshop, I probably used like 85% of the notes that I got back. And just like Paul, I love plot. There's a lot of plot in my novel. And one thing that helps is when you have a lot of plot, even if it's like coincidental or improbable or whatever. One thing I learned from Paul was he was like, if there's a moment in your novel where you as a reader is like, how is that going to happen? Have one of your characters be like, how is this happening? Like, just have them ask.
So smart.
I was like, why haven't I not done that? That's amazing. Yes.
So smart.
Yeah. And just like, it makes your character smart. And he is all about showing your character's full intelligence all the time. And so I think those two things together, from Amira as a babysitter to the 3-year-old that's there, just like, where can I show how smart these characters are all the time, and not do a disservice to them or my readers. Yes, they both read it, and that makes me very happy.
That's really great. That's such good advice too.
They're really good.
Really good. Let me write down that in a note.
I know. I do all the time.
Yeah. And so in Such a Fun Age, I do think one of the things that's spectacular about it is how every character is fully realized. Okay? You're right. From like a 3-year-old child, you get her complete personality, right? You get her complete life. And I think that's not easy to do when you're juggling so many characters. So what was the inspiration for this novel in the first place? How did you come up with these characters?
Yes. I think it started out really small. I always start exactly what you're talking about. I always start with characters. And I feel like the number 3 in storytelling does so much heavy lifting, and some of my favorite movies and books and everything always have 3 characters, from Moonlight, which is so beautiful. I just recently watched it and I was like, this movie is really good.
Stunning.
Having a son, a new mentor, and a mom that's really struggling. Like the alliance is there. Like it's already so packed, to movies like rom-coms, like My Best Friend's Wedding. Your friend, and the girl that he loves now. Like I love the number 3 and what that does for alliances. And for this, I started with just like wanting an awkward 3-way relationship. And so I started with kind of an old story, which is a Black woman who's figuring things out, and a babysitter, a white woman who hires her, and the child, which obviously the alliances there are already mixed up, because one minute, for the 3-year-old, Amira's her favorite. The next minute it's her mom. Like she's 3. She but then I got another relationship, which was a young Black woman, her white employer, and her new boyfriend. And you find out that there's a connection between all 3 of them. And so I think the main source of inspiration was just crafting an awkward relationship that you can't want to stop reading it. And also just, I love hyper realistic dialogue and just portraying people as they exactly are. I think that in literature, a lot of the time you see a lot of Black characters in tropes. Either they're perfect and they want the best and they get the best and they do the perfect thing in every situation, or they are stereotyped in another way where they're just always like downtrodden by society. And I wanted to create like kind of a perfect B student to show someone who was really real and also like dealing with being a Black woman in America. And so, you know, making Amira a really, really good babysitter, but also she's not like the best communicator all the time. And sometimes she compares herself to her friends, but sometimes she has really good I just wanted her to be so real. And I wanted every character to like have wins and also have really big mess ups sometimes. Yeah.
That's fair. I think that makes her so relatable, right? Like there are so many moments when I would be reading the book and she sounded like myself, or she sounded like a family member or a friend, right? And I think something about the novel that's really successful is how so many people can just relate to it, right? And why I think you've been able to reach such a wide audience. And just what you said about the rule of three and bringing 3 characters, I think you do the perfect setup for awkward moments, right? Like there are so many moments when I was reading the page and I was just like, I can't turn the page, right? I have to turn the page, but if I do, I might explode, right?
Right. Those are my favorite, when you're like, I need a minute, but I cannot stop.
Yes. Yeah, let me take a break and like get myself together.
Totally.
Yeah, and I think that's just really well done in this work. So how long did it take to write this overall?
Okay, that's a great question. I think I thought about writing it for like 1.5 years, 2 years, and then pen to paper about 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
But then after you sell it, you do a lot of edits with your editor. So that's like another like 7 or 8 months or so. So it's kind of like 3 years or so with a year of mentally preparing myself to do something. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's, I mean, I can see like just all the hard work that went into the book. I remember reading a draft.
You read an early draft.
Yeah, I read an early draft. And I have to say, like, that first early draft, I still couldn't put it down, right? I mean, you remember my marginalia was pretty much useless. It was just like, oh my God.
Your marginalia is so good, though, because you'd be like, oh, I'm like, okay, great. So she gets the moment that I'm
sound effects. It was literally just reactions to everything. So, and then reading, like, the novel when it came out, I was just impressed by, one, just how much of your voice was still there, right? Because I think sometimes with editing process, I feel like for some writers, I just feel like they're completely edited out of it. But like it felt very similar to the first draft, right? And
that's
because
good
the first draft was so strong and so like clean already.
That's like, really interesting. And like this is my first time doing all of this, obviously, so I'm learning. And it was really interesting, the publication process, because I definitely had agents who would say, you know, this is a little too Black sometimes. And some people would say, can you make it a little bit more Black in these ways? And it's just like, you just have to write what you think is true.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. And I think that there's plenty of room to show my characters at their friend's house, listening to rap music and having a really good time. And also like in a bathroom, negotiating a job and like worrying about benefits. Like all of those things are facets of who people are. And so it's good to hear that it still sounds familiar, but also I love characters that are familiar that can surprise you. Yeah. And it takes a lot of edits to make sure that they still sound the same. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think Zara should be the president one day.
Pretty good.
Pretty really good.
Like I know I say like all of my characters have flaws, but like she's so great.
She's so great.
That's what she's doing.
She seems like perfection. Honestly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're here to hear you read. Right? Like that's what everyone's super, super excited to hear. So what part are you going to read for us? Can you give us kind of a setup before you jump in?
Yes. So Amira, as I've said, is a 25-year-old babysitter for Alex Chamberlain. And after a incident where Amira is racially profiled, Alex is very concerned that Amira will quit. She feels like this is her fault. She wants to right the night's wrongs. And so she also has kind of developed a little bit of a friend crush on her babysitter. And so Alex is going to try to connect to Amira on a deeper level after her shift.
I love this passage. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Alex walked upstairs into the kitchen. Briar looked up from her drawing and said, Mama, this is not a scary ghost, okay? Alex put her purse on the counter and realized that the room had turned very sweet and warm. That morning, she had put out pumpkins and gourds at the center of the table and hung fall leaves collected from the backyard over the windows that looked out onto the street. Briar colored a picture of a very friendly ghost next to a plate of cucumbers, garbanzo beans, and plain pasta. On the fridge were new art projects, a googly-eyed witch made out of felt, and a purple paper that read Boo. The letters were colored in so nicely on one side that it was clear Amira had helped Briar complete it. Alex took off a drapey cardigan sweater, kissed Briar's cheek, and received Catherine from Amira, who was already holding the baby up. You guys have a good day? Yeah. Amira picked at the dried food on the knee of her jeans. I think we did pretty good, huh, B? Briar held up a crayon and said, You do it. Amira sat down next to her. I do what now? Let's say please, Bri, Alex said. Amira, she added, do you drink wine? Amira carefully accepted a crayon from Briar. She blinked and said, I mean, yeah. Alex took 2 glasses from the cupboard and thought, yeah, you do. She sat down, and with a bottle of wine in between her legs, she somehow managed to uncork the bottle while holding Catherine. When Catherine looked up at her, Alex said, Hi, did you miss me or what? Alex told Amira she could take the wine glass into the bathroom with Briar, that she did it all the time. She hadn't eaten lunch, she hadn't eaten since lunch, and she'd lost 5 pounds since her very loving and supporting intervention. And as she sipped her glass of wine, cleaned up the toys from the kitchen table, and listened to Amira give Briar a quick bath, she sensed those lax and wonderful feelings of decorum leaving her body. She lit 2 candles on the kitchen counter. She turned on a playlist with Tracy Chapman and Fleetwood Mac. And as she turned off the bright kitchen lights and left the chandelier blushing over the table, Alex recognized that she was very much courting her babysitter. But the evening reminded her of Fridays with Rachel, Jody, and Tamra. She hadn't poured a glass of wine for another woman in months. Amira emerged with a few picture books underneath her arm, a glass half full, and Briar in tow. Amira stopped at the kitchen counter and took another sip of her wine. This is really good, she said. I like it too. From the table, Alex held up the glass and looked at the color. Are you a wine person or no? I mean, I like it, Amira said. She set the glass at the other end of the table. But I'm used to drinking like boxed wine, so yeah, I'm no connoisseur. There were moments like this that Alex tried to breeze over, but they got stuck somewhere between her heart and her ears. She knew Amira had gone to college. She knew Amira had majored in English. But sometimes, after seeing her pause songs with titles like Y'all Already Know, and then hearing her use words like connoisseur, Alex was filled with feelings that went from confused and highly impressed to low and guilty in response to the first reaction. There was no reason for Amira to be unfamiliar with this word, and there was no reason for Alex to be impressed. Alex completely knew these things, but only when she reminded herself to stop thinking them in the first place.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Kylie. So welcome.
Yeah, that was so great. That's a passage I remember reading and my shoulders were up to my ears, right? Where you're just you're rooting for everyone in the novel, right? You're rooting for that scene to go well. You're like, how awkward is this going to be?
Right? I love rooting for characters. It's you can be different. Just be different.
Just be different. Just be different. I'm like, just don't say anything.
Right.
And it's interesting that we see Alex turn inward so much and know that she could be better or she could make this less awkward, right? But it's complicated.
It's complicated. I don't know what it is about scenes that have really low stakes, no one's gonna get hurt, nothing's gonna happen to anyone, but the high stakes of I might humiliate myself in front of this person seem like the most important thing. And so that's definitely the balance I try and get.
That's all. And it seems true to her character too, right? Where she's like, I need to get this right. Like if Amira doesn't like me, what am I gonna do?
Right.
And you feel for her in that moment where you're just like, yeah, just don't mess this up. Stop asking questions. turn off Fleetwood Mac. Like
just turn it off. Just let her go home. Yeah.
Let her go home. Please. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for reading, Kylie. That was really awesome. So I think Tony is going to join us to turn back the chat.
Yeah, well, thank you both so much for that. That was truly incredible. I am going to turn on the chat now, so if anyone would like to send me a question, I can forward that on to Jade so Kylie can answer it. As we're starting to collect those questions, Kylie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, an upcoming project you might have, or what you're working on now?
Absolutely. So I was thrilled that the film rights were optioned for Such a Fun Age. And so right now I am executive producing the film adaptation. And it's a strange time in that production is shut down. We are still moving forward, but obviously we don't know what's going to be happening with production. But I love film a lot. And this is kind of a hot take, I feel that the best adaptations are not exactly like the book and kind of do what the medium does best. So all of the awkward moments in the book, I can't wait to see how we can do those on screen. And so I'm trying very hard to not be too precious about how we adapt this. And I'm kind of letting the experts do their job. And then I'm weighing in when I'm like, nope, she would definitely do this. So those kind of moments. So I'm definitely working on the screen adaptation. And then I very slowly started novel number 2, which for me in the beginning means reading a lot of nonfiction. I just get really inspired by reading from the experts of things that I'm really interested in, and then taking very messy notes that I go back to later. And I'm like, what does that mean? I have no idea. It's fine. So I've started on novel number 2, but other than that, I mean, it's just trying to stay healthy and inside while I'm here in Philadelphia. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's exciting to see what it'll be like in film. Right. I think you're right. Seeing it translate to another medium is just like, you see what other like aspects can be like shown, right? That like we can't necessarily show through writing, but that they'll shine in film.
Yes. Did they say?
We're getting questions in the chat. So the first one is, what's the inspiration for the cover? I don't know this actually. It's a stunning cover.
Okay, I can totally talk about this. I don't think anyone's asked me about this too. Okay, so this is also not the first cover. This was maybe the 6th or so of trying to get the spirit of this. So basically in the background is all of the things that you see or hear Briar talk about, from birds to, they go to an aquarium at one point. She really loves fish. Yeah, she has a airplane themed birthday party at one point. There's toddler food. And then there's a key, which is kind of symbolic to a key to something goes wrong with the key. I won't give any spoilers.
No spoilers.
Basically, I love the cover. I think it's really fun and colorful. And from the beginning, it was really important to me that this was a really accessible book. I love a cover that is not intimidating. Like that would be my worst fear, that someone's like, oh, that's like an MFA thing. Like that's not for me. I love a good story. I love something really fun. And the great thing is a lot of people are like, oh, I saw the color, so I just bought it. So that worked. So that was great. I wanted it to also kind of be similar to the way that we talk about race, which is we try and joke about it immediately. And so I wanted to have lightness, but also a little bit of darkness as well. So I obviously did not draw this. I can't draw anything, but the artist did a really great job.
Yeah, the artist that's incredible. Yeah, I love the colors. And I feel like on a bookshelf, it just stands out. Like even the spine, it just pops off the shelf and makes someone want to grab it.
Right. There's something about it. Yeah. And I was really into the handwriting of it. There's someone who does like bespoke letters in my novel as well. So I like the handwriting as well. I think it really accomplished the job. No one knows who I am. So I needed something really bright to make myself stand out. Yeah.
Awesome. And what about the title? Where did that come from?
The title, well, I was a nanny for a long time. This is not a book about me, but I was definitely inspired by my time as a nanny. And I don't think that you can be around children without hearing some iteration of it. It's always like, with a stranger, it's kind of like talking about the weather. And it's, oh, how old is she? Oh, she's 18 months. Oh, such a fun age. Yeah, that's great. It's just this thing that you say to someone at the park or at the store or whatnot. And so immediately that put me in the headspace of like a toddler childcare thing, which I liked for the book. But going a little bit deeper, I have a young 25-year-old woman who feels like she should be having a lot more fun than she's having. She's really struggling. She's going to run out of her health insurance. She feels like her friends are where she should be. And so it was definitely a biting comment on the age of my characters as well. And then just going even deeper, this novel is based in 2015. And I think that sometimes we romanticize how things were before, saying things are worse now, when issues between domestic workers and security officers have been going on for a long, long time. And that was the year that Black Lives Matter started to make really, really big moves. And so I wanted to comment on all of those ages, from the age we live in to the age of my characters, to having fun at all of those ages.
Wow. Well, it's performing on multiple levels. And was that the first title that you came up with? Like, did you just know that that was going to be it?
No, and I didn't have a title for like 2 years. I don't know if you're like that too. I don't have titles like when I'm working on something.
Yeah.
And then I had a list of titles and I really felt strongly about that one. And then after I sold it, my editors were like, is this really the best title? And that's when I came to Philadelphia to look at apartments. And I went to Uncle Bobby's coffee shop, which is a Black-owned coffee shop, which is really great. And I wrote down every title I could think of, but kept coming back to Such a Fun Age. And so thankfully, that's what they chose too. And Uncle Bobby's ended up being where I launched my book tour. So it all worked out.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we have a few more questions too.
Yeah.
So any advice for an incoming MFA student starting in September?
Yes. Okay. Oh, I have so many things to say. Okay, I'm gonna make this good. First of all, congratulations. This is really exciting that you get to dedicate your life to reading and writing this year. I would say find your readers as soon as possible. I was kind of crazy and like shoving my work into people's hands immediately. But now I feel like I have like 4 or 5 readers, including Jade, that like I feel like I could go to them and talk to them, because that's what I really wanted out of a grad program, to meet people who could do a little mini workshop with me forever. I would say not every workshop is going to be wonderful, and that is okay. Like, everything is a mixed bag, and try and get something out of every workshop, but don't blame yourself if it's just not the right one for you, and that's okay. I feel that this is a really special time that you get to just write, and so don't waste it. I feel like, at least try and be like, I'm going to get 2 hours out every day. Even if it's just you staring at your computer, just don't be on Instagram. Just like try and think about what you're trying to write for those 2 hours. And also just be like a gracious workshopper. I think a lot of grad school is about becoming a really good reader as well, and really giving other people the same kind of feedback that you would like. And so just really just like giving into it fully and being like, okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours on this person's, submission, even though it looks like they spent 1 hour on it. That's okay. Like, I'm just going to really dive into this and just really submerge yourself in the process. And go to Noto sandwiches and like have fun. Like,
Noto.
yeah. I miss it a lot.
So good. It's really good. That's really great advice.
Did I get it all? Do you have advice? I feel like there's so many things.
I feel like you hit the main ones, because sometimes I think about those like 3 years where I could just focus on writing and like there was nothing else, and I lived near farms and it wasn't noisy like New Jersey, and I'm like, oh, to do it again.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I just feel like even if you don't know who's doing a reading, go to it. Like, just really immerse yourself and just like soak up the time. Yeah,
that's great. It was wild to live in a city where pretty much anyone whose book came out, you knew they were going to be there and you could see them.
Yeah, you just go see them. And even sometimes if you're like, oh, like that's not the kind of writing that I want to do, now I know that. Like, I think that it all helps inform you no matter what. Yeah,
I think that's good advice, Tyler.
Pretty good.
Nice. Okay, what's the next book about? Do you like talking about your next projects, or are you kind of someone who's like, I don't know, I'm kind of superstitious with that. So
really, I think it depends on the day. I think that I'm trying to learn about my tendencies as a writer, and I don't think that I will ever write anything that doesn't involve class issues, just because I think that they're so fascinating. And like, I'm not very good at math, but I feel like that is my like math problem that I want to solve. Like making perfectly familiar characters of like, okay, this person, where does she eat? What are her clothes like? What is her shoes like? How does she speak? Like, finding these perfect descriptions of characters is an addiction of mine. So I think that it will definitely have class issues. I like writing about female characters a lot and their relationships with each other. I definitely like wouldn't have a book if it wasn't for a lot of the relationships that I have with a lot of women. And so I like figuring out what makes those relationships work. I think the next novel will be based somewhere much warmer.
Wow.
And that is all I will say.
A really funny teaser.
A little teaser. Yeah, I think that, well, I will say this. There's a lot of awkward moments in Such a Fun Age, and a question I get a lot from people is, I couldn't tell if you wanted me to like these characters. I felt, so confused, and that is the perfect response. I just wanted it to be like any human you meet on the street that you're like, oh wait, are you okay? I can't tell. And so I think that this next novel will have even more awkward moments and even more like, ooh, I don't know. So just get ready to be uncomfortable whenever that happens. Yeah.
That should be the blurb on the front. Just get ready to be uncomfortable.
100%. Yeah.
That's really great. Okay, I think we have time for like one more question. Okay. What about your favorite authors or books?
Ooh, okay, that's a good one. Okay, there's an author named Hallie Butler who's wonderful, and her books are very short and they are angsty and kind of about the mundaneness of workplace life. And I read it all in a day, both of them. They're wonderful. Wow. So Hallie Butler, her books are Jillian and The New Me. I read a play by James Baldwin before I came to school, but in school I read Giovanni's Room, which
so good. It's perfect. A perfect novella.
It's really
casually, good. Yeah.
And I also came to it so late, and I was like, guys, James Baldwin. Everyone's like, we know James Baldwin.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So good. I think, and I also been reading Notes from Native Son recently. Right. He knows what he's doing.
Perfect.
He's really great. And then lately I've been reading more nonfiction to inspire the second novel. I read a book called Paying for the Party, which was a big source of inspiration, where sociologists went and lived in a dorm in the Midwest and interviewed the residents there. And it's, of course, about class and money and hierarchy and where people go afterwards. Those kinds of things are really inspiring to me as well. Is that what I've read? Yeah, those are pretty good ones. I also love Donna Tartt a lot. So I hope she comes out with something else in the next 5 years. Yeah.
Wow. Paying for the Party sounds really interesting. To live in a dorm.
Yeah. Yeah. It has all of that really realistic dialogue that I really love. And so nonfiction is a huge inspiration for me, for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Kylie, for talking to us, for reading and sharing your work. That's really exciting. So now I think it says a representative from New York Metro Iowa Club is going to join us. I know.
Thank you, Jade. That was so fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, again, thank you both. Just wonderful. And actually, Kylie, the New York Metro Iowa Club is hosting a virtual book club, and they're going to use your book as their first one. And so we have Megan, a representative from that club, who's going to come on and tell everybody a little bit how they can get involved. So take it away, Megan.
So hi, I am Megan Walton. I am one of the board members from the New York Metro Iowa Club, and I want to thank the University of Iowa City for Advancement, obviously, for hosting this event. And it works out really well because as obviously we've had to change our programming given what's been happening in New York City. We haven't been doing our game watches. We haven't gotten to be together. We thought it would be a great time to try a book club. And we thought that obviously we had to choose a book that came out of Iowa. And lucky for us, Kylie's book is very new and very of the time that we're living in. And so this all worked out really, really well. So in the email about this event, there was a link to click where you could register for our book club. It's happening on Wednesday, July 15th at 7 o'clock. And it'll be on Zoom. You don't have to be a New York Metro resident. You can be anywhere and join us. And, we do a lot of game watches and a lot of big events here in New York, but I think it's really great that we get to do something about, Iowa and the Writers Workshop and maybe something not sports related too. Yay, go Hawks. But, so we hope that you guys are interested and maybe want to come talk about Kylie's book with us.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan. Thanks for all you do for the New York Metro Iowa Club and alumni all over the country. open to anybody, and we put the link up in the chat. So please feel free to join us for that and dive even deeper into Kiley's book. We actually have our next chat from the old cap coming up in 2 weeks, and it's going to be Jason Snell, who graduated in 1998 from Iowa, and he makes music with his brain waves, and that is exactly what it sounds like. He puts a EEG on his head and connects it to a computer and synthesizer and creates music with his brain waves. So I will put that link up in the chat as well. So feel free to join us for that. Kiley and Jade, you just made about 105 new best friends today. We truly cannot thank you for doing this. This has just been so fascinating and wonderful. And what's really great about all of this is it just shows that the Writers Workshop continues to recruit incredible talent and create incredible talent. So we wish both of you nothing but the absolute best on your journeys. And thank you again so much for being part of this. As always, go Hawks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.